Well, cool. I think we'll go ahead and get started. As we have people, I know people are probably still going to come in, but that's fine. No worries. I've had to teach junior hires before, so I'll try to be not distracted by weird things y'all do in the crowd. But so let me just give like a brief introduction. Obviously, the title is like leveraging AI in cybersecurity. So my name is Nathan Howard. I'm a cybersecurity engineer for Workday. I wanted to give you all a little bit of background about myself. So I have a wife and 2 kids under 5, so I don't get that much sleep sometimes. But I've been in cybersecurity for about 3.5 years now. Been in IT. I went through like a software development training course. I am one of the people who kind of came, like many of y'all probably came from a non-technical background, or maybe even from a different field going into cybersecurity. I was a junior high and high school teacher for a few years before going into to cybersecurity. But currently I work at Workday. I'm on a team called the Security Advisory Services team. And basically what we do is we partner with the different development teams at Workday to both provide security guidance, and I'm one of the lucky people on my team who also gets to do some development with AI and trying to utilize AI to really like enhance our process. So today, that's kind of what brought me into wanting to talk today about this, like kind of like the subtitle here, security in the age of AI. And because I come from I went through to get into IT and into cybersecurity, I went through a software development training boot camp, and I'm just trying to I wanted to take some of the things that I've been working on currently and kind of make it where it's super accessible. I'll tell you, and this is a little bit of a spoiler for a later slide, but I spent $20 a month subscription. That's the only thing I spent to actually make to be able to do this. So I wanted to make it super approachable for just anybody to come into. So LLMs are really incredible about some things, right? And sometimes they do really stupid things and they don't make sense, right? How many of y'all have tried to have an LLM do math for you, or maybe tried to see if it would give you a hash or something like that? It's just really bad. But I mean, honestly, there are things that we are bad at too. Like if I just pointed at somebody and said tell me to the the 10th what the degrees of this angle are, and I don't give you a protractor. I mean, no, it's you can eyeball it and maybe you're going to tell me, well, it's less than 90 degrees. It's maybe more than 45. It might be really close to 45. You don't have the exact number, but this is if you had a protractor, you could if you had the right tools, you could do what you needed to be able to find the answer. And that's kind of what we're talking about today. Specifically, we're going over MCP, if y'all have ever heard of that before. But this is basically a way that we can give an LLM some tools to use. And it's going to take, LLM's not good at math, right? But we can create a tool for MCP and give it some Python code on the back end and make it where it'll do math for you. Those are the kind of things that we're going in through today. So the first question here is kind of, what is MCP? Does anyone heard of the term before? Hopefully people have heard of it. And I'm not talking about the mod coder pack from Minecraft. That's not what I'm talking about today. We are talking about the Model Context Protocol. So just a little bit of history of the Model Context Protocol, MCP. Anthropic built it back in November of last year, and it's a open source framework for communication with LLMs to be able to give it the access to the tools that it needs to be able to do the things that we want it to do. So I will have some terms here that I wanted to go over, just so hopefully to make things super approachable. The first thing we have here is an MCP client. So the client is what handles communication between the LLM and the server. Then we have the MCP server, which handles communication between the MCP client and the tool calls. And then we have the MCP tools, which are functions presented by the MCP server to perform a task. So you can think make an API call, do some math, convert file, all those kind of things. And then obviously we know LLM, unless you've been living under a rock, you probably don't work in cybersecurity, but large language model, obviously. So here's a basic diagram of what an MCP looks like. So you have your end user, right? And I picked one with a nice beard. But that's the person who's communicating with the client. That client ends up making API calls to your ChatGPT, your Claude, your Gemini, Llama, whatever language model you're using. And in turn, it knows what tools, and the MCP server is what actually kind of converts that into tool calls to be able to make the calls that you need. So before we actually get into the actual, I'm not doing a live demo because I watched the Meta Glass thing. It didn't work too well. I was like, probably not live demo today. But I did do a recording of what I was just running it on my computer. We're going to go through that in a second and what that. But first I want to talk a little bit about some security implications of MCP. This is an emerging technology, right? If we're talking about what is a fairly new technology overall is like container, right? You have container security. There are vendors who have a ton of container security tooling and stuff even now. There aren't really a whole lot of specific MCP tool, MCP security things. So I just kind of wanted to give some general, obvious guidelines and some things that we would want to make sure to think about. Obviously, first, if you're using in a corporate environment, you probably want to restrict your LLM. You don't want your LLM sending data back to be trained on, especially if it's IP. Obviously, if you're doing least privilege, right? So if you have a tool call that, we'll say, good example, let's say it's connecting to your Confluence, right? Well, you don't want it to be able to write to your Confluence. You don't want to necessarily build out the functionality where it's going to be able to delete your Confluence spaces. So you probably want to put that principle of least privilege to use and limit your API, your service accounts or however you're using for credentials. Obviously, any server container hardening that you want to do to make sure that it's not accessible and vulnerable that way. Another thing is prompt injection concerns, right? If you have a very open, how many of y'all heard about with AI, people were asking it how many rocks I should eat in a day? Prompt injection's a real thing. People have found all sorts of really fun ways to do it. As a side note, if y'all have ever heard of it, there's a thing online from a company called Lakera. It's called Gandalf AI. That is a really cool little resource to be able to go and practice prompt injection. So I wanted to point that out too. But you want to make sure that you build it in a way that you're kind of making sure to prioritize the system prompt that you put into this rather than it being overwritten by anyone's prompt injection. And then if you're doing this with a web app, you obviously want your input validation, your cross-site scripting, API security, general things like that for a web app. So let's kind of talk about the example that we're talking about today. Our use case today, so like I said, a $20 subscription to Claude Desktop, that's literally the only thing I spent money on to put this together because I wanted for anyone to be able to use. Basically what I did, and just so you know, Claude Desktop actually works as both the LLM and the client. So there's a way, and I'll kind of go over how it works a little bit later. But you can set up Docker desktop to run and host the servers, the MCP servers for you. And here are some that I actually did set up for this. These are all built-ins in the light blue. I didn't even think about this for colorblind people. I'm sorry. But the top 5 here, those are all pre-built. And all I had to do was create a service token in my GitHub, and then I was able to connect to GitHub and be able to do commands. NVD, Shodan, Obsidian, Hacker News, all those different things that you might want to use. It was I want to say the NVD one doesn't even take credentials, right? Because NVD's, I don't know how they had built it on the back end, but It doesn't even take credentials. It works without credentials. So you can go and download Docker Desktop and use it for free for your personal device. And the last two here, I do want to point out, I have an RSS MCP server as well as a VirusTotal MCP server. I actually built those using AI. So full disclosure, I was watching a Network Chuck video. If you've ever seen him, he's great. I did ask him before. I emailed and one of the people from his team said it was fine to talk about. But he has a really cool Markdown instructions document on how to for AI to build MCP servers. And I actually used that to build the last two, the RSS feed, the VirusTotal feed, and they basically just worked out of the box. It was super easy. I didn't have to do too much tinkering to it to get it running. That's the kind of the overall use case. So let's watch a video real quick about, some things to note first. The Docker MCP toolkit is if you're going on Docker Desktop, that's the tab. And I didn't have to do any coding on those. And the nice thing about it is, how many of y'all have ever been developing something or done something and you've had a memory leak and it just crashes your computer? Those aren't fun, right? The great thing about this is the way it works is the Docker images are only run when the AI calls it. So when when Claude Desktop calls the VirusTotal thing, it only calls it and then it spins it down when it's done. So you don't have 9, Docker images running on your 8 gig RAM and crashing everything. It only runs when you need it, so that's nice. And like I said earlier, $20 a month. Hold on out, what's going on? Okay, here we go. This is a video and I'm going to kind of talk through as it's going. But this is a video of me doing one. It says, can you look back at the last day on NVD and on Hacker News and make a report and write it to my Obsidian? Any links would be appreciated. So the way this works is it said get temporal context, so it's trying to gather the information. Then you see the second one here, it says get searches CVEs. It literally did a search of the NVD to pull back any CVEs for that came out in the last day. And then I was able to use, it called and looked for change history, and then it looked at Kevs, and then it started looking at Hacker News, another one of the built-in MCP toolkit servers that pulled and was just getting stories, just because open source intelligence is great when you don't have to go look for it yourself. So this is a really easy way to be able to do that. And then Obsidian is a local note-taking server that you're able to run and build everything in Markdown. As you can see here, I kind of scrolled through it a little bit, but it writes the whole file into the Obsidian. You can download it as a PDF. And here it gives the data for example data and stuff. But that's all it was. I didn't spend 15 days locked in my basement to try to build write everything from scratch. I'm just using out of the box tools. Here, just to point out, I did screenshot a couple things that I wanted to show off. It's as easy as MCP toolkit right over here, and I just click add MCP server. And this for the vuln.nist MCP server, it queries NVD. Under configuration, it doesn't even have anything there for you to add. Super simple, super basic. The next thing here is when you go into your Docker Desktop, under there, actually, let me back up real quick and point it out. Actually, it's not on this page. So it says right there, it says client. So you go to client. You can set up Claude Desktop and just follow the instructions. And that's all you really have to do to get it set up. And now you have to restart Claude Desktop when you do that. But once you do that, you can start calling those tools. You can even ask it to list the tools it has access to. It'll be able to show you what it needs to be able to start doing some things. Now, I'm going to talk about the prompt because the prompt is pretty important. How many of y'all have ever tried to do some stuff with AI and it doesn't give you the information you want? You ask it a question Just for kicks, I typed in what is MCP, and actually I'm not a Minecraft guy. I played some, but I didn't know that mod. Goodness, I don't even remember what it's called. The mod content packs were even a thing, but Claude actually told me that they were a thing when I asked about MCP because I didn't specify what it was for, right? I wasn't specifying cybersecurity model context protocol. So the things to remember is just to be specific. If you have tool calls, reference them in your prompt. Say, I want you to do this before you do this, before you do X before you do Y. Here's a good example. This is actually for work. I did double check that I was allowed to say this, but like on a prompt that we're doing to scroll Confluence to pull information, I told the AI in my prompt, I was like, I want you to initially look at this, pull this Confluence page first, and make that the source of truth, and then you pull in other information, right? Because you want it to, if you have a source of truth document, because you know it's all. Raise your hand if you've had a problem trying to find the documentation for something at work. Pretty much, I think we can all raise our hands, right? So if you have a document that you know that you're trying to use this AI to use primarily, you can just tell it to. That's the nice thing about it. Also, make sure to give it guardrails. It's probably a good idea, especially in a corporate environment. Don't tell it not to give stock trading advice. Maybe probably not the best thing for people to do, but you can give it guardrails so that it's only doing what you want the AI to do. Like if you have, yeah, go ahead.
I'm assuming this might be a silly question, but I'm assuming that it doesn't matter like
which LLM. No, it's pretty generic. That's why I even put Olam on there because that's a local LLM that you can run on your home PC if you have a graphics card.
So you can use like the CLI tool versions then?
Probably. I would have to look. It kind of really depends on, like for this specific example with Docker Desktop, it might be a little bit more niche. You might need to be able to be running containers in AWS or Azure or something. But like from general perspective, it should be pretty straightforward if you're doing it at home. But yeah, so like give guardrails, give examples. If you want the format of your links to come out with Markdown, then tell it to come down with format links as Markdown. I also wanted to point out, and I have a links page at the very end that y'all can take pictures of, but Claude has an interactive prompt maker that is built with AI that it basically has a paragraph and you describe what you want your prompt to do. And then it's going to take you to the next page and it gives you like 7 questions to help guide how your prompt is going to be built and what kind of responses you want to come out. And then it returns you a markdown text prompt that you're able to use and upload to whatever AI you're using to be able to, if you're doing it if you're like uploading an instructions.markdown file or something like that. The things to know, and if anyone's ever tried to debug software or code with LLM, you probably know this, but if you are super generic and you say just fix it, a lot of times it doesn't do anything well. It doesn't work very well. You always want to be specific. Like for that one specifically, I always try to, if there is if you have an error code or an error message, throw that in there. And then like with code, it tends to work a little bit better. Don't expect it to read your mind, right? We got to do a lot of extra communication, right, to be able to make sure your LLM's doing what you want it to. And obviously, don't think that the prompt is not important because it's kind of the backbone of how LLMs can work for us, right? So here are some MCP tool examples. I just want to kind of go over some of the things I've seen or that I've set up personally. So this first list here is the create Obsidian note, query RSS, search NVD, commit to a repo. I have another video that I can probably put on. I have a GitHub that I have some of this data in here for, but I actually was able to I told Claude Code, I said, write me a React app and commit it to my GitHub. And it committed to the GitHub. It actually tried to commit it to a branch, and then it realized the branch already existed because I'd been playing with it and tried it before with a different prompt. And so it said, okay, let me try to swap to a different branch. So it renamed the branch and tried again. And then it worked, and it was able to push to GitHub. Use that as at your own risk, because that's starting to get into, it could potentially be a little rough there. But you can also search Terraform documents, search Shodan, VirusTotal. Some things that I have not done, but I know is capable, pull an email, right? If you have a Surface account and you have, like, use, I don't know, if you're using Microsoft, right? Then you can use like Graph API. You could write a Python script that would pull emails if you have a Surface account with the right permissions. Or if you're going to run Nmap or something, you can run a Docker image that has that's running Kali Linux or something. This is really like the possibilities are endless. There's like I've even seen like a thing called Alpaca AI or Alpaca. It's like an API for like stock trading and buying. You could probably connect it there. Haven't done it yet. I probably don't want to trust my money to it, but it's something you could do if you wanted to. And then I wanted to leave the rest of the time, and I know I kind of went fast through it. I know we still have a good bit of time, but I really wanted to leave a lot of time for questions and comments and things like that here. If anyone else has been using MCP for anything exciting, but that's kind of a general example of like how you can use MCP. I really wanted this time for more to be this hopefully will spur some people, hopefully all of y'all, but at least some people, to go test this out yourself and try some things for yourself and hopefully be able to have some fun late nights trying to debug something. Yeah, go ahead.
So with MCPs, how are you guys, it's kind of a twofold question. How are you guys doing RBAC and DLP, checking out that data before it's processed in, stuff like that?
Right, so we're specifically not, at this moment, we're not worrying, we're limiting it on the front end of like the web app is going like, like making sure that only the users who need to have access. And then the tools themselves are going to have their own access. And that's kind of where, for us, because I'm an architecture team, that my customers are other employees. So it does make it a little easier that I can just say, hey, everything on our Confluence is fair game. And I don't really have to worry about limiting who can see what from that perspective. That is definitely a valid concern. You have to kind of figure out that use case as well. But you can definitely, there are out-of-the-box tools that do some similar things. Like if you've ever heard of Glean, something like that, those inherit the permissions from the user from the get-go. And I'm sure that's something that you could probably code out. It's a little bit more in-depth, yeah.
Because we've talked about this before, is whose permissions are you using? Are you using that service count in order to access through your tools or your MCP servers? Or are you going to inherit the permissions of the individual user? That way, so we're doing a little bit more RBAC on the backside to see what data they're actually accessing, and then, again, where do you set that control?
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it just from like the general perspective of like, if you have like a web app front end, you could, if you're using like, you have your SAML or your OAuth or whatever like that you're doing, you could always pass those credentials through. So that's definitely on the list of things you could do for sure. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
But you are able, like with the MCP tools, you're able to limit, like with your Confluence example, like if you have like an external and an internal repository of Confluence stocks, that you could limit to one or the other with the MCP.
Yeah. Like so, for what we're doing right now, we just have we have a service account that has the access. So obviously, if we were going to go to if we were going to, I'll tell you, our project that we're working on right now is legitimately in it's in a dev kind of state where my team is really the only team who's like using it right now. So we're just more trying to make sure get that POC done. That being said, when it comes to like setting up, like if you want to pass through like your OAuth or SAML or whatever, to who has access to what, you definitely could. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, go ahead.
How's your conversations with third-party vendors on taking your data and using it as training data, and then ensuring that nobody else has access to it, just like a SaaS solution? Like I say, hey, this is my data, nobody else has access to it. Like, how's your guys' conversation with third-party vendors on that?
So we're kind of the way we're doing it is we're just using a like a cloud provider's LLM because we already have an enterprise agreement with them, so we don't really have to worry too much about each individual third-party vendor. Although that kind of gets a little bit more out of the scope for what my team does. We're more internal architecture rather than like the compliance and like all that sort of stuff. Yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
Can you write an orchestrator MCP that controls what MCPs are loaded and unloaded for your LLM?
I was actually just having a conversation about that because theoretically, and let me go back to the architecture diagram because it's kind of interesting. Right here, there's nothing to say that your tool calls don't call Claude or your AI. I will say though, just like the general like coding perspective, if a server called a tool that was also an MCP, then you're getting into like the nested for loop, and you're probably going to run into a lot of speed limitations. And the one I just showed you took a minute and a half, and I have some videos of like me testing through and trying to find a good example to show y'all. And it was very easily 4 minute long. I even had some that were so long that Claude was like, you have to click this button to have it keep going, to keep computing. So I think from that perspective, you could really run into some issues, but it's definitely theoretically possible, I think.
I was thinking of making where the brains of the language model was interchangeable based on what the prompt, kind of like how they did ChatGPT for a while, where it was broken into different focuses.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So one of the things that you can do with prompts that's kind of interesting is you can give it workflows. So for instance, we have one where the workflow is, if they're asking an architecture question, we're going to search this Confluence page first. If they're asking a general AI question, we're going to use workflow B, and it's just going to not tool call, so that it doesn't waste time searching Confluence for someone who's asking the AI a very general security question, like how does OAuth work, right? That doesn't necessarily, you probably don't have documentation about how OAuth works. So it's not like the way it's set up is it's not necessarily going to search Confluence for that. It's just going to use the LLM's context, if that makes sense.
And are those workflows developed out of like the instructions?
Yeah, in the prompt. Yeah, that's where the prompt is super important, because you can give it those instructions and kind of limit how everything works and kind of guide the responses that way. Yes, sir.
So theoretically, you take the person out of this.
Theoretically, yeah, absolutely.
You could absolutely.
Yeah.
Kind of like, for example, an AI that runs in a microcontroller, which is a data and it runs right on the security processor of your trust. And if I wanted to teach that thing using this to go check CVEs or new vulnerabilities and where in my system might those be, you could automate this entire process.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like if you have like a SIM or something and you wanted to use AI to enrich your SIM alerts or something like that, that's definitely, all these kind of things are. This is why we want to talk about this, because there's all sorts of possibilities of things that you can do.
How's it coding?
It has its ups and downs. I've had days where I'm trying to get Cursor to help me do some stuff, and I'm about to throw my computer out the window. And other days, I was able to write some MCPs that ran the first time I used them. I think like a lot of that is down to the prompt, and when you have errors, like I said, like communicating what the errors are, what things you've checked, and then that kind of helps guide the LLM to respond in the right way.
Have you seen anybody using your Edge AI, your used to be called TinyML? So TinyML, are you familiar with
So I've done a little bit of the smaller model stuff on my computer at home. I haven't really seen it used in the corporate environment though, to be honest. But I'm also, and I've only been at Workday a few months, so I'm still kind of new to Workday. Haven't really seen it, but not to say that it's not happening. I just that's not something I'm terribly familiar with seeing it used in corporate. And I'll get a drink real quick. Anyone have any other questions? Anyone concerned that AI is going to take us all over?
No.
What about your tools? Earlier you mentioned Kali Linux and things like that. Where do you see this going as far as like innovation possibilities?
The possibilities really are endless. I mean, like you think it's really easy to spin up a Docker image to, for instance, like Trufflehog. If you've ever used that for your your repo scanning, things like that. I also see it for, I really do see it like a really good opportunity here for like web application testing, because if you can, if you're just making API calls, that's truly, in reality, like the virus total one, it literally is just making API calls with Python. It's not doing anything wacky or crazy. It's just making API calls with Python. And this is more of a framework that is capable of a whole lot. So that's where the possibilities really are almost endless. Yeah.
Rapid scale debugging or testing, probably quick high scale deployment options, things like that, probably pretty doable.
Yeah, like I said, there's so many different things you could do. I guess the best way to put it is if you can make a software that can do it. Now you do start to run into some problems with like time limit, right? Because AI, like the thinking and stuff like that, you're going to eat up, like some of these ideas that we're talking about are going to eat up a ton of tokens if you're on a token-based model, and you're going to have a really big bill at the end of the month. But yeah, go ahead.
So going with that topic, so for Confluence, are you guys pre-adjusting, like tokenizing like every single night, or are you guys tokening it on the fly?
So with MCP, this is actually the great part about it, and it's actually the reason we're not using RAG model. If you're familiar with that, let me actually, just because I don't know might be. If y'all don't know what RAG model is, basically it's a way that you can download a data set and index it in a way that makes it really easy for you to do what's called a nearest neighbor search on the request, and then pull back information based on that, like similar words. But no, that's the reason we didn't do that, is because we didn't want to pull the entirety of our Confluence data and then have to worry about pulling it every day or every week or every month, and then something gets changed and it's not persisted into the database for the RAG model and stuff like that. So that's a big reason on why, because this is on the fly live. What someone would go if you are tasked at work to go search Confluence to find information about this, whatever topic, this will do it, right? Go ahead.
You were talking about using this to orchestrate all these different things. What if you used a different service for the orchestration? You just made one API call to that. Would that bring the latency down some?
So,
like Zapier or something like that. You're having to does that make
I mean, yeah, I mean, theoretically, you could use Zapier as a tool call, and then it could potentially like pass through. The only thing I'm thinking of is that kind of does introduce more potentials for error, right? Because if for whatever reason something like you have more steps, also means potentially more like places that it could break. Not saying you couldn't, but that's kind of the first thing that comes to my mind.
fair enough?
Yes, sir.
So, I'm pretty familiar with this. When I ask, well, I think it's more of a tools.
Mm-hmm.
And where you've got something that's local and then something in the cloud, and how the two might work together. And for example, with generative AI, you can have it do tasks, or you can program tasks to do safety checks, for example, before you turn a machine on or off, right? Through panel, power panels, things like that. Do you see how this could be a tie between OT embedded technology versus an enterprise security monitoring, management, update, patching, those kind of things, and have more, maybe a tighter loop for control on updates?
I think yeah, that I haven't really thought about it. I mean, I work at a software company, so I'm not really thinking about OT very often. But no, that's a really good point, because that's definitely something you could do. As long as you can hit it from a CLI, hit it from an API, and if you're running things locally, then I definitely see I see some value in that for sure. Especially there, you got to think about like what AI is doing. AI is doing the reasoning, right? So like even from thinking about it from like if you're a security analyst or something like that, and a security analyst might have, if they get an endpoint alert, they might do 10 different things, checking file hashes, checking, running F strings on the file, see if there's anything weird there that they need to be concerned about, right? All the different things that a security analyst might do. Well, those could be added into tool calls, and it could give an initial report. And there might be we'll use round numbers, 20 steps that an analyst might do when they see like an endpoint detection on a executable or something. And you might find out after 5 that you're done, right? But if you can automate all 20 tasks, the AI you can kind of teach the AI to reason through some of that stuff too. And obviously this is not a taking away jobs in the sense, because you still have to have people who validate it, right? Because I have gotten wrong information, right? We've talked, like, that's a whole other thing to think about, is talking about AI doing hallucinations and things like that. But no, I think definitely that's the security thing. How do I word this? If I would feel less comfortable if AI was necessarily doing all my security checks and I was working with high voltage or something like that. That being said, the stuff that I'm using AI for is more tasks I don't want to do, the mediocre tasks. But I think having a human in the loop as well, having it do the checks, and then have a human going through and verifying those checks, I think that would be that would definitely be in the realm of reasonable. Yeah.
GE back in 2018, Paradise Fire. It took them forever to get the power. And the power line was running down and sparking the regulators. They didn't have ways to audit the cutoffs.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And in reality, automating cutoffs is good, and you also have to think about too, especially in the same way that you would automate cutoffs for like a high voltage system or something like that. That's also making the decision that you're taking down, like there's a risk calculation, right? That you're taking down production and costing thousands or millions of dollars an hour. In that same way, from like a security analyst perspective in a SOC, if you just start automatically locking down machines, you're going to accidentally lock down a VP and they're going to be really mad at you. You know what I mean? Especially if it turned out to be a false positive or something like that. So I think there's definitely some stuff to look at there, and there are definitely some value. There definitely can be some value. It's just there's always that game of figuring out anything and everything that can go wrong, because we all know Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, right? Yes, sir.
The front end of this system that you built and that you're labbing on is a prompt. Is there a way to make, in the one that you have built, is there a way to have that be like an API plugin that you could tie to something else to be reactionary to it then?
Right, yeah. So like my front end right now, it's running on Claude Desktop, but like, I mean, if you could build it into an API, and if you were building like a Flask or Fast API on your machine or on the cloud or something like that, then you can definitely build because in reality, all the front end is just making it pretty for us, right? In reality, it's all of that's basically built into a API call that's saying, I'm calling a chat, here's my prompt, here's what I'm putting in. So yeah, definitely could be.
So you can make this whole thing respond to like an event.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It presents you with a more informational thing other than just a red light on the screen. You get like the answer to the question you're going to put in the API gets done automatically when the event happens, instead of you having to go through the AI.
Right. So like if you had like a SIM and you had a detection on something, you could have it when this detection goes off, then it could send a webhook to initiate this process. Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely along the lines of something that could happen. Yeah. What time are we at? We still have a little bit. Is there any other questions? If not, we can break a little early and.
What resources do you suggest for people to start working in this area, i.e. Hugging Face?
Say that again.
What resources do you suggest for people to start learning this space, i.e. Hugging Face? If you're gonna try to learn this from what we talked about here, honestly, the idea of running Docker desktop and going on YouTube and learning how to do Docker and stuff like that, and then just paying for Claude Code, $20 a month. I mean, in college that was a lot for me when I was in college, but now DoorDash is pretty. I don't know how many hours you'd have to DoorDash to be able to get $20 a month, but It depends on your tip base.
Right. It depends on how fast you are, right? But no, because from there, if you're building Docker images and you can kind of connect to different tools, and then you're just running it locally there, as you mature that life cycle and you start maybe putting in AWS or Azure or GCP or something, then you're going to potentially get into the more expensive things where you're spending, $100 a month running a couple EC2s or something. But I think generally speaking, if you're trying to get started, or if you have a gaming computer at home and you can run some LLMs, LM Studio, download some local LLMs and save yourself $20. But yeah, that's kind of the things I would recommend to start going through.
Is there a community resource where people upload their custom MCPs that they've already developed? Or are they just putting them on GitHub?
I think people are just putting them on GitHub right now. I feel like with this Docker, the Docker desktop MCP toolkit, I feel like it's in a beta phase right now. But I think as it gets into more production, I see something like that would probably.
Do they have a repository feature inside?
Yeah, there's a ton of different models or different things to start off with there. Within Docker. Well, here's the links page. If you have the first one, there is the docs for Model Context Protocol. We got the one for Claude Interactive Prompt Maker, the MCP tutorial from Network Chuck. This one right here, the custom MCP OzSec, that's the one I did. The ones I built. The RSS feed that pulls 3 or 4 different security RSS feeds. And then there's my LinkedIn as well. But yeah, thank y'all for listening, and hope y'all have a good rest of your OzSec.